Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, beautiful creatures of this beautiful planet, we are back on League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. We've returned for some LCS power rankings, and caveat for all the power rankings this week, except the global ones. We missed last week, so this is 2 weeks of power rankings we're doing. So if teams climb up a bunch, you got to keep in mind that it's also the previous week we're taking into account.
Yeah, there's certainly been enough changes around the world that you would be able to say that before any type of power ranking, missing a week situation, especially the changes that we have seen in the LCS, personnel moving around, swapping teams, the results of those swaps. Absolutely, some teams jumping up and down the leaderboard for the LCS, but that is just what we want to talk about.
And if teams are jumping up or down the rankings, I'm not sure what CLG is doing in the rankings, because listen, they didn't have far to fall. They were at 9 2 weeks ago when they did the rankings. Of course they've slipped down to number 10. You're insane to not have them at the bottom, but we were saying before this, do they even deserve to be 10?
Which is, unfortunately, my answer is going to be no. It should be lower if it was possible.
Put the FlyQuest main roster there, because Fly Academy's better. So normal FlyQuest, then maybe CLG.
Absolutely, with the things are performing, and this is quite a slip up when you're looking at the CLG lineup and then the players and the organization, everything, how it's been handled, to get to this point where at one point, when everything was going right for CLG, when everything clicked, all the players, believe me, it sounds crazy now, but there was a time that it happened and they had a good week.
They went 3-0. They did it.
We're looking at that, and we're looking at that performance. We're looking at the highs there and going, hey, you put them against another squad in a playoff series, sure, they might lose, but it's at least going to be interesting. They're going to be competitive. That's so mind-blowingly far away now from what we have seen from CLG, thinking about even being in playoffs, let alone competing in playoffs. This has gone the complete opposite direction for Counterlogic Gaming.
You only have to look at that Immortals game to see how ruined the mental is for a lot of these players on these teams, because as soon as they lose, the Infernal Soul gets stolen, denied from them, then the Baron gets stolen by the Varus, the game's over. You can just see they completely roll over and basically stop playing the game. It's just like, another loss, boys. We're out of here.
It doesn't matter that the clock is reading Tanner time, my man. They're all looking in. We got DeMonte in the mid lane. There was no difference as far as how it looked for CLG and what the actual performance was. A lot of people could have guessed to some degree that it really wasn't Pobelter's skill or performance that was the biggest issue or weak point for the CLG lineup. That replacement has not exactly come through.
And there's a lot of other issues that you could talk about with CLG, starting with the organization itself. Immortals and Dignitas both down a couple of spots over the last 2 weeks, despite having these better records. And they still, these squads, again, it's a huge difference from CLG, because we've still seen both of these teams show up and get an upset win against one of the better teams in the LCS. It's enough that you're like, okay, I guess you can go to playoffs. I've still zero confidence in either of you, but you've shown enough.
Yeah, they're in that conversation for sure, that you can be in that belief about them and everything else. But when I really think but when I'm thinking Dignitas and FlyQuest, CLG, Dignitas, what we had seen from them in this last little bit, I don't know if it's necessarily fair, but I'm comparing them against the Dignitas that we saw previously. And we're talking about with Dardoch, or we're talking about with Samigo. They're not stacking up to that level right now. Sure, you're seeing some nice performances and some gains being made, and Acadian has stepped in, and the jungle pool has been in a good position for him to have a good impact for Dignitas. It's just not nearly to the levels that we have seen from the organization before, or should expect from them at the LCS level in production. And when you have teams like we'll be able to talk about ahead of them in the power rankings, this is where they got to be slotting in.
That's right, because we have positives. We actually have positives in the bottom 5 to talk about in the LCS, which is a rarity, and that is FlyQuest Academy, really, and Golden Guardians, both climbing up big amounts over the last couple of weeks, and that's the bigger reason why squads like Immortals and Dignitas are sliding down. FlyQuest Academy, as soon as the boys come up, they start 4-0. They're getting wins against TSM. They're getting wins against the other top teams in the LCS. And the Golden Guardians, the crazy stat, GG only has 2 less wins than Cloud9 and Team Liquid in summer.
Absolutely crazy to think about that one. I'll let everyone digest that one a little bit. We'll talk about the FlyQuest Academy boys and how they've been doing. Really have been fantastic since they've obviously been all put up together with the FlyQuest organization. And the big one for me, the difference between them and the underperformance that we had from FlyQuest throughout the entirety of the spring split, is there's a clear-cut identity for these players to play behind, to how to be aggressive, these type of things. And it's all been put in action on the Rift, and everybody seems to be on the exact same page, the same synergy to get through it. And that has been their big strength when they've been able to pull through and get the wins for FlyQuest. Really think that has been a type of positive momentum that's going to be hard to stop for a lot of LCS teams here, that clear-cut, focused identity that they've got. On the flip side, we talk about the changes, the roster changes as well being made by the Golden Guardians, adding in former FlyQuest player Licorice to the top side.
And it's worked there too.
And then we're seeing the Licorice that we expected to see with FlyQuest. The impact that he's having with Golden Guardians right now, that's what we were hoping. That's why there was so much hype around Licorice being a free agent in North America. This is what you're starting to see with the Golden Guardians. He is certainly even more so than what Solo provided for the Golden Guardians stepping in. He has been a bigger influence and impact for this team and lineup. And you're seeing other players step up as well with the Golden Guardians, talking about throwing something wacky in the mid lane. Always unbenching the Kench for Mr. Ablazeoff.
I remember Tom Kench top lane, how disgusting that was. Yeah, the mid lane.
I don't want to remember it no more.
Mid lane one was equally terrifying to see. But, I mean, seeing these lower tier teams doing fun picks like that is exactly what you want to see. And if they weren't hampered by that 3-15 demon of spring split coming in and trying to ruin their summer split, I think people see that record of Golden Guardians and they're like, oh, that's ugly, get away. But 15 of those losses are from spring.
Yeah, as we talked about yesterday, there has to be, or at least the Golden Guardians in their lineup, same with the FlyQuest Academy boys, they've absolutely proved and deserve a change in your mental state, right? And change in how you perceive these teams, and to separate them from their spring record because of how poor it was and how different they are performing now. Unfortunately for LCS fans, that can be said in reverse for a couple other teams we'll get to talk about.
I mean, in 2 weeks, FlyQuest have gotten more wins than the main roster did in 5 weeks. So that's all you need to do to see the improvement and growth of that FlyQuest Academy, deserving of climbing up from that bottom. CLG also helping them out with that one. The top 5 has been the boundary that we've talked about basically all summer, even back to spring, you can talk about, with there being a clear gap between the top 5 and the bottom 5. And that remains the same. But FlyQuest and Golden Guardians are climbing up, and now you got a squad like Team Liquid, who I mentioned only 2 wins more than Golden Guardians. They are 11-10, barely above 500 in the summer split.
Talked about this many times. This is that, object might be closer than it appears in the mirror situation for Team Liquid. Glancing over at Golden Guardians and FlyQuest, absolutely. That's what you got to be thinking.
Not the cars you're expected to see in Team Liquid's rearview mirror.
No, and when you're talking about cars, what is the car's performance of Team Liquid's car, my man? What is the horsepower for the horse team? Because we are not seeing
looking like a horse and carriage is what they're looking at.
Yeah, and everyone else is driving a full-on car right now in the LCS. It's not been the return exactly as expected or you would hope for with Alfari for the team individually, and as far as how everything has worked with the rest of the team. But that is the bigger discussion, the rest of the team and everybody else, because of course, and I mean, expected, and I don't know how much blame you want to put on him individually, the organization, the situation. Obviously, Armeo has been a step down from what Santorin would be able to provide, or the type of things that you can do with Santorin as your starting jungler. And even outside of Armeo, you got to be looking at the main guys, the main starting players for Team Liquid, and some of these underperformances outside of Alfari. I think Jensen is someone that hasn't delivered the elite level of performances in the mid lane that you should have been able to expect from him, given what the LCS pool is. And then even when you're looking down at the bottom lane, I want to challenge Tactical and his performances. I think maybe a bit more removed from the Tristana spottings and jumpings that we were having in spring, but certainly not the level of impact or damage that is necessary to be a top team that Team Liquid wants to be.
And the same goes for Cloud9. Talk about the other team from the finals in spring underperforming. You heard even Vulcan talking in an interview talking about it's embarrassing to lose to teams when our team is 10 times the salary. I'm gonna say your salary is more than 10 times that of FlyQuest Academy there, Cloud9.
Absolutely a difference in the money there. And yes, there's no other way to look at it. I think it's good that the players are having that type of realistic look at it, but at the same time, got to be able to find the positives, got to find the sunlight to break through. And if you're Cloud9, that sunlight, that shining ray of sunlight, it's all in the top lane. The top lane of Fudge.
Yep.
The Church of Fudge up in the top side. That has been the big key. Yes, we've seen, varying levels of performance from good to excellent from Perks in the mid lane. You're paying $5 million to bring over Perks. You're not paying for good. You are paying for that excellent. Need to see more of that, I think, is a stress to get back to an elite level for Cloud9. Because, everything outside of Fudge has not been to a good enough level for what the expectation has to be from the community and Cloud9 themselves.
And for a squad like TSM ahead of them, you don't have nearly as many concerns as you've had with Cloud9 and Team Liquid. They still seem to pretty routinely go 2-1 on the weekend and have that loss kind of be like the FlyQuest one where you're like, how did you lose that one? It's either a big throw or you kind of just get randomly stomped. But for the most part, you're still somewhat confident in TSM. The problem for them and why they're moved down a spot is, remember, 2 weeks since we've last done a power ranking. So Evil Geniuses, they're right up to that number 2 spot, and they are right on the tail of 100 Thieves for numero uno.
TSM would love to give you a little bit of a chat, but nuh-uh. That ain't the time for that, because it's all about what the Evil Geniuses have done and earned. Yes, this is a bit of payback, the 2 weeks of this power ranking change. And in those 2 weeks, it has been win after win after win.
10 of 11. 10 out of the last 11.
Insane to think that this is the same Evil Geniuses team, the same squad, the same players that are popping off, where you're, at the beginning of the split, we're worried about, what about that other side of the coin, right? The other side of the coin that tends to appear more than you would like it to appear for the Evil Geniuses. That just simply hasn't been the case for these players, for the team. Everything is working fantastic. And, one of the moves that I myself personally doubted heading towards this split, replacing Deathly with Danny and how he has fit, not only as far as his individual skill and getting up to pace, everything has been great. But as we've talked before, his fit with the rest of the team, the identity that this Evil Genius team wants to have when you have players that want to play the way they do in Jizuke, Senscare, and Ignar, even Impact to some degree in the top side. You want to talk about those 4, you got to have someone to match up and be willing to deal the damage, to be in the middle of the fight with them. Danny has shown that so far, and his individual skill has also been a difference maker for Evil Geniuses.
Yeah, he's been one of the clear differences, along with that more consistent play from the coin flippy boys that you're talking about, and Impact setting records for gold leads at 10 minutes. No big deal up top there with the Renekton. And because 100 Thieves, they're still holding on to that number 1 spot, but they definitely haven't looked as dominant over the last couple of weeks. So absolutely that gap is closing now to get them ahead, because they have had some kind of uncharacteristic losses over the last few weeks.
I think the comparison that you would want to make with the momentum or styles of Evil Geniuses and 100 Thieves is when when Evil Geniuses gets that opening, gets that sight line to take that pass, that overtake, it's pedal to the metal. They are going all in. They're making sure that they're the ones crossing that finish line. 100 Thieves, they're picking up an advantage in some of these games, and they're kind of going, well, it's a nice Sunday drive. Let's just chill around here, guys. Oh, you want to take a visit to the beach? You got a business to do, man. You got to close this game out. That is what we need to see more of, a killer instinct from 100 Thieves. And when you talk about the players on their roster closer, Abadage, FBI, there should be some killer instinct, but we haven't seen enough of that from them when they've had some advantages for 100 Thieves. Absolutely would be something I want to see improve from them in comparison to what we get from Evil Geniuses climbing up the rankings.
Who would have thought EG might be the one to push the whole region of North America to that next level here in the summer split? But that's it today for the LCS Power Rankings. Eric and Mark here with you guys as always. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.